it's rare that I get the chance to have talks like this with founders who I respect, who I've known since early stage, who are also friends on a personal
Yeah,
level. And that's what
totally.
makes it even more of a special experience to me. I was thinking about it this morning when I was working out. The first time you came into my office with these short Sir Kensington bottles,
Yeah,
jars that looked like they were kind of
yeah. Short
packaged by
jars.
hand. And you were like, hey, do you know any good designers? And there was a couple that I maybe had recommended that never worked out.
Yeah.
And you ended up pulling off what I believe was magical brand execution
Thank you.
in building a brand when all odds are against you, straight out of business school, being a consultant and then starting your own brand. The way that you were able to build brand awareness and connection with the consumers and disrupt a category that was so old school in ketchup, which then became mustard and mayo and dressings. And if this is like a loaded question, so it's not so specific, but when you have the chance to reflect and you think about the key things as two or three things that you can really attribute most to your success to date, what are they?
So much for starting with softballs, huh? It's like straight into the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can love it, but I just
Yeah.
figured jumping into like
Yeah.
some of the important stuff.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Like, I mean, I can look back on my last decade in the world of food and feel incredibly proud and inspired and happy, but it's not all me, right? Like, I think first and foremost, I'm surrounded by, or have been surrounded by, and I'm currently surrounded by amazing people. That's the number one ingredient to success, is the right teams, right? I'm not just saying that because you help people build great teams, but my co-founder, Scott Norton, our initial board, our first investors, and the people all along the way that joined the team that helped build what we eventually created. I mean, Scott and I couldn't have done that alone, obviously, right? Like we didn't know what we were doing. That was the point. Like, as you say, we were food outsiders. We were 24. We didn't know the first thing about entrepreneurship. And you sort of accumulate people in your circles as you go through this journey. And I think my number one answer to that is finding, through sheer luck, the amazing people to partner with, raise money from, work with, and then through sheer hard work, recognizing the importance of retaining them in your circles, right? Like, it's luck to find them, and then it's work to keep them. And I think being purposeful and intentional on that really, really paid off. I think the other thing for me, right, this is maybe not true of everyone's journey, but for me, remembering that, like, the world of food, fads come and go, but trends tend to stick around.
Mm-hmm.
And really figuring out for Sir Kensington's and then Hugh, what's the bigger picture of where food is going, and what are we going to attach? How do we intersect with that, rather than trying to sort of play whack-a-mole with like the trend of 2020 or the trend of 2019 or the fad of 2020 or the fad of 2019?
100%.
Staying focused on like, what's the long term here, building something for the next 50 or 100 years. That's what's been important.
That always resonates with me when I talk to you. It's like building a sustainable business that can be around for another century.
Yeah.
And I think such a big part of that is, like you said, it's not like just about attracting people, it's retaining them and finding their sweet spot and how they all fit into this community. People that are building something that's impactful, that is sustainable. Right. And like that's a lot of the magic. But having built Sir Kensington, and then you sell it to Unilever, and then you go run your organization within a global strategic, comes with its own challenges and learnings, which is such an important chapter of the book. And then deciding, wait a minute, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it with other founders who I believe in, but I didn't create that. Mm-hmm. Like, what was the mental shift that went on there? How did you decide to do it? And what was so uniquely different about that experience, which you successfully sold to Mondelez again, your second exit in a short period of time, may not seem short, but a short period of time.
Yeah.
Like, how was that so uniquely different?
Oh, man. Well, in many ways, it was the same, because I had the chance to lead a team that I believed in and represent a product that's amazing. So in those ways, it was very similar. But in most ways, it was totally different, right? Like, having your own business is filled with all sorts of like peaks and valleys of emotion. because it's, I mean, you're creating a thing, right? I have a child, so it's not quite like a child, but it's like the closest thing to a child that, you might create in your professional life. What I knew to be true about myself was that I loved the role. I loved the opportunity and the privilege of serving in the CEO role. I always saw it as a privilege, not an entitlement, right? I had to earn it every day from the board, from the team. So I recognized and loved that privilege, and there was always room to be better at it. So that was part one that I recognized. And then part two was that food spoke to me as an industry, and mission and purpose driven companies. I feel, from 2010, when we started Cirque, through 2017, when we sold it, and 2019, when I left it, that what a tremendous amount of education the world went through on B Corp and sustainability and purpose and mission in all sorts of ways that excited me and educated me. I realized that has to be part of my life as well. And so, all of that came to a head when I met the Hue team, and I found, their vision for the company and the mission and the purpose to be fully aligned with my own vision for food, which is creating a more sustainable, equitable food system through products that actually nourish.
Yes.
Rather than attach themselves to a fad, but find a long-term, meaningful, health-forward trend, right, to believe in. Simpler ingredients, better taste, right? It doesn't get more basic than that. But doing it in a way that went beyond just, hey, we're going to make a profit, right? Like we're gonna sort of package this for an exit. It was very much, we see the room for improvement in B Corp. We see the room for improvement in culture and in values. And that was a challenge that felt different, helping someone else achieve that at their business rather than building it myself. And it seemed like an opportunity to get better at the job that I just feel lucky to have.
I'd love to hear more about how you address that, like transitioning into someone else's baby, if you will. What was your thought process going into this new organization? I have to maintain the integrity of what's already been created, but then I also have to make these recommendations and the necessary changes to truly show that I can grow this business dynamically. It's such a challenge because everyone has what they're used to. But when you come in, you have to respect what's already been created.
Absolutely.
How did you go through that over the first few months?
Yeah, it's probably a better question for them. Like, how did I do? But from my perspective, I think it's,
they'd say you did really well. At least that's what I've heard.
Yeah, you can confirm that later. But for me, I spent the first 90 days or so learning, right? So like talking to everyone on the team, but also talking to Jason, Jordan, and Jessica, the co-founders, to understand like what are the untouchable things, right? Like from their perspective as the founders, what are the parts of the business that are so precious and so important that can't be messed with, right? And to their credit, there weren't that many of them, right? And that's not to say everything was messed up. It's just to say that they're very open to different opinions. And I think that's what made the partnership really work. But the easy answer is constant, clear communication. Here are the things I'm seeing. Are you seeing the same? Here are the things that I'd be interested in affecting. Are these on the table or are these off the table, right? Understanding the boundaries and getting on the same side of the table to say, what are the shared objectives over the next 3 years, right? And, I think, I see a coach. I have a professional coach, and Charlie Jones, amazing.
I love him.
He's great. Yeah, he gives really good counsel when it comes to getting on the same side of the table with someone, whether it's your colleague, whether it's your boss, whether it's your friend. And it's starting with, what are we both solving for? Rather than I want this and you want that, which are opposing viewpoints, to say we actually both want Hue to become a globally recognized snacking brand, right? We both want Hue to become more sustainability driven, right? So let's solve for the shared goals. Yeah. And then we can be on the same side of the table to say, here's what I'm seeing that could be done in order to get to those, to those goals. So, I mean, it was just constant navigation. And I think to their credit, they were very open with feedback to me, and I was very open to getting it. I was always asking, how am I doing? What's keeping you up at night, right? And just because we have a good relationship doesn't mean there's never conflict or tension. There's plenty of that. In every good relationship, there should be conflict and tension, right? But we found ways to talk about it.
It's incredibly valuable. The openness on both sides of that, having been involved as friends and professionally through that experience, like everyone expressing what was so important and what really needed to take place in order to enact positive change. It seemed like there was such alignment.